Good afternoon, everyone. I'd especially like to welcome today Bernadette DiPino, Chief of the City of Sarasota Police Department, for joining us today. And Chief, you're speaking with a group of the leaders of the Downtown Sarasota Condominium Association. Since you and I last spoke, the entire world has changed. I never thought I'd utter those words. Everyone is living under the shadow of COVID-19, and an awful lot of people, certainly the people you see here, are wondering, how is the police department? Is it changing? How is it coping with all of these changes that COVID-19 has forced on all of us?
Well, thank you all so much for having me here. And I know all of you have been going through a lot over the last couple of months. You've had big responsibilities of taking care of the people and answering questions. And I'm happy to be here to be able to help you understand what we've been going through, what we've been doing, and what we'll continue to do to get through this. It's quite unprecedented. I will tell you, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime, and especially as a police officer in almost 35 years. We've gone through the crack epidemic. We've gone through a lot of different challenging things in law enforcement, but nothing so challenging as COVID-19. Because really, as all of us know, we're fighting an unknown enemy who's constantly changing, who we don't really have good and accurate information. And as a former SWAT commander, it's a nightmare because I gather intelligence, and as soon as I get the intelligence, it changes overnight. And the next minute, it's something different. And I think that's caused a lot of stress and anxiety amongst a lot of people. But I'm really proud of what we've done in the Sarasota Police Department. Right away, we put a number of things in place. I've been actually keeping track of everything we've done so far, so that hopefully 100 years from now, the next chief that has to go through something like this will kind of have a playbook to go by. But one of the things that immediately that we did was made sure that we had the proper protective gear for our police officers. And we were very fortunate that we were prepared for this. Luckily, when the bird flu had occurred in the past, a wise commander here at SPD had purchased a number of the N95 masks, so we had some in stock. I immediately purchased different cleaning materials to make sure that the officers had hand sanitizer, and that we also made sure we cleaned our building. As a matter of fact, we made it mandatory that every part of our building was touched at least 5 times by our cleaning crew, and we just recognize them, and they deserve it as the employees of the quarter because of all the hard work that they've done to keep us clean. The governor's order initially closed all of our gyms, but as all of you know, physical fitness is really a big stress reliever, and they excluded police departments and privately owned gyms. So I kept our gym open, but I reduced it down to only 4 people at a time to give us some good social distancing. And of course, it's always been mandatory to wash everything before and after you use it. And I find it almost comical when I hear people saying, well, you've got to really wash your hands after you use the restroom or after you touch something. And I'm like, what were you guys doing before? Were you not keeping clean before? Because I've been washing my hands forever. I've always been that way. And I've always been hyper vigilant. We really equated this to something like a really bad case of the flu, even though it's a little different than the flu. It has a lot of the same properties in that if you wash your hands, you don't come to work sick. That was something we mandated right away. That you keep your social distancing. If you're out in the public, and you felt uncomfortable, we made it an option for our officers to wear the mask initially, because at first they said don't wear a mask, and which I thought was unusual, because I thought, well, why are all the doctors and nurses wearing a mask, and you don't want us who are contacting people and may have symptoms that don't show it. So eventually they did say mandated to wear the mask. So our officers were wearing the mask, and we'll do that when they're out in public. But we also did things like, we had one of our officers, dad owns a company, that they came in and they cleaned the interiors of the cars. They put some type of a spray that helped clean it. So a number of the cars were cleaned. We also made sure our employees were separated, like our detectives worked closely together, so we spread them out throughout the building so they didn't have immediate contact. I was really concerned about the number of officers that would be exposed to COVID. because it could take down a workforce. But this is something that I had anticipated, and so had chiefs and other businesses, I hope, years ago, because they said if you got a really bad case of some type of a flu or an illness, that it could take down a significant part of your workforce. So we had a plan in place to handle that, and I will thank God and say we were very fortunate. So far to date, none of our employees have contracted COVID-19, although we've had a few scares, and I'll share with you how that went. We actually eliminated some of our units, and I shouldn't say eliminated, we actually suspended a couple of our units and transferred them to the telephone reporting unit. So what we did is we actually reduced the number of calls that our officers actively responded to, and we would have people call our number and then report crimes and incidents that were not, where people were not in immediate danger. It was usually after the fact. It was usually a property crime, and then they were able to report it through telephone reporting. We locked our front door right away. We have a buzzer where people can actually call us in case there's an issue, but we shut that down, so it limited the exposure. Also, we allowed some of our staff, mostly civilian, to work from home. We did have a few people that had some conditions that we didn't want to expose them, so we allowed them to work from home. They did telephone reporting also. I made sure that I personally reached out to the people working at home, as well as I would send videos or emails out to our officers to keep their spirits up and, make sure they were okay. So we, really care about our employees here. The city does also, of course. But I just wanted to make sure that they knew we had their best interest in mind and educate them about what we were doing to keep them safe, because their safety was my number one priority. And I equated it to when you're on an airplane and they tell you to put your mask on first before you can help other people. I felt like if we couldn't keep our employees safe, there's no way we could keep our community safe. So we were very fortunate we didn't lose any of our officers to COVID, but we did have a couple of cases where officers were suspected of being exposed to it or had symptoms. So until they could get tested, what we did was we gave them the option to stay at a hotel that we paid for, so they were isolated from their family. And fortunately, so far, all the tests have come back negative. We are still waiting for a few more results, and that's the biggest challenge that we're facing, is getting those testing results back quickly. And the testing, I'm concerned about the testing. All it tells you, do you have it or do you not have it? So if you don't have it today, well, tomorrow you could get it. So yeah. I'm looking forward to the day that they actually have a test that will test whether you have it or you don't have it, but also whether you had it in the past and have antibodies, and then how far in the past. And they do have tests, but they're coming out of China, which nobody is trusting right now. And so we're not purchasing those until we get an FDA approved test. So we're on the lookout for that. So far, crime has not changed much for us. We still are seeing our numbers. I've been tracking that. They went down a little bit because we have less people out. But because of that, the exposure of the homeless has been heightened. So you see a lot more homeless in the community. So we're getting a lot of complaints, at least initially, about a lot of homeless people in the area, a lot of complaints about speeding, a lot of complaints about, we actually had one individual call us early on in COVID and suggest that people all walk in the same direction when they're walking the bridge. And while you can't mandate that, you can suggest it. But as soon as we put signs up suggesting it, then people thought we should put police officers on the bridge to make sure people were walking the right way. And I told them, well, I'd have to put 6 police officers or more on the bridge, 2 at each end on both sides, and then 2 at the top in case people decide to turn around and go back the other way. It's not really a good use of our resources. So finally, I think people after 2 months are starting to just walk in that right direction. It's just, I guess, creatures of habit. We have seen some violent crimes. I was actually concerned within the last few weeks, especially in North Sarasota. People were not complying as well with the governor's orders or the city and county's orders. And we had a lot of people that were, getting together and having huge parties and incidents. So we did a lot of education, and I'm really proud to say that we haven't arrested or cited one person for a violation of these orders. And what we're doing is if we have cases of violations, we're referring them to the state, and because it's ultimately either the state or law enforcement's responsibility for the actual prosecution of these or the addressing of these issues, including like restaurants right now. Because I've been asked by a number of people, are you guys going to enforce the rules about the restaurants? Now, I will tell you right up front, I am not issuing measuring tapes to our police officers. So they will not be out measuring distances. They won't be looking to see if people are socially spread out. But if we do get complaints about people violating the governor's orders, we will be writing reports and sending that to the state to determine whether they're going to prosecute. We want people to have common sense and use common sense. And for the most part, I will say they have. But I have noticed, like I said, a little bit of an uptick in violence, of agitation, of aggravation, frustration on the part of citizens in our community all over the city, which is really to be expected when people have been locked down for long periods of time. So we're really encouraging our officers to use a lot of patience and understanding. And I told our officers, listen, if somebody violates the order, and as long as they don't hit you, do your best to, maintain peace and encourage people to cooperate with you. We have opened up a little bit of our officers going out and doing more enforcement, because I've seen an uptick in gun violence, especially in North Sarasota. And I will say, and we've had at least one incident near Siesta Key Bridge, and where we actually had a vehicle shot at. So I just see people are getting, I guess, so frustrated and agitated to being locked down, that we're out there, and I will tell you, and this is almost a scary statistic, that we're getting guns, at least almost one a night, off of the street, which is good news, but it's also a little bit scary news to know that there are still weapons out on our street that people are using illegally. Our narcotics unit are still going to be out and working and doing enforcement, and I'm really proud to announce that we actually created, over this COVID-19, a new unit that will be out in the community. I think all of you will be very happy to see it. It's called the CAT Squad. And they're a community outreach squad, basically, but they're going to be problem solving and working with businesses, community members, associations like each of yours. They will be highly visible. They'll be on bicycles a large majority of the time, wearing bike uniforms, highly visible, and they're going to be working on unique problems within areas of the city. So they'll be all over the place, and like I said, working with groups like yours and businesses and community members to come up with creative solutions to some of the problems that we're facing. So
well, sounds like you've been incredibly busy. I'm going to throw it open to the members who are here. Bob Perollo, because I know they all have questions.
Yes. Bob's muted.
Bob, you're muted.
You're muted. Right.
Bob, we can't hear you. Is anyone up?
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Chief, thank you for that information. I'm at Broadway Promenade, and our manager has already been talking to, I think, Lieutenant Alexander regarding the CAT Squad. And my question is, what will they do about things like amplified music? We have some issues in our area that there's a house where they just absolutely blast music, sometimes for hours on end, and you can't hear anything else going on in the community. Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. Before COVID-19, I've been working very closely with Bob Fournier with the city attorney's office. And the problem is right now, the way the laws are written within the city of Sarasota, they're nearly impossible for us to enforce. As an example, if you had a car driving by and it was blaring loud music, we would then have to stop that car, give them 15 minutes and a warning, and 15 minutes before we could actually address it. So how do you stop a car and leave it there in the same area for 15 minutes? So, and it's the same thing with the housing. So we've been working closely with the city attorney's office, and I'm hoping now we can move forward with making sure that it's easily enforced laws. Like where I came from, what we did was we would stand 50 feet away from a property line. If we could clearly hear audible after a certain time at night, we could then cite or even arrest the individuals in that location. So we're working with the city attorney's office to come up with really good laws that are going to be easy for our officers to understand. That'll be now. What we do have are noise meters, and that if you have that address and you want to give that to me either by email or you can give it to me now, however you want to do it, I will make sure that that goes on to a list where our officers are addressing it, and they'll periodically drive by. But I encourage you to continue to call us, and with our officers' enforcement, it gives it credence as opposed to police officers just arbitrarily riding around and saying, oh, you know what, I feel like addressing this house because the music's loud. We like complaints from the neighbors. And I hope this unit's also going to be applying their skills to be able to address noise and disorderly type of behavior like that.
Other questions, Roger?
Yes, Chief, I would like to, how can the police department address the issue of noise and speeding on Gulfstream and the Ringling Bridge?
Okay, we've gotten a number of complaints about speeding throughout the whole entire city. Part of the problem was as soon as the shutdown went into place, traffic basically dried up, and the people that were on the road took advantage of a clear road and were speeding. We caught vehicles doing 90 miles an hour on Fruitville. We wrote over 1,000 tickets just in the last few weeks, and we're going to continue to write tickets, everything from speeding to not wearing seatbelts, everything that you can imagine. So our officers have been addressing that speed. As a matter of fact, either this past weekend or the weekend before that, I think it was this past weekend, our officers were out there looking for motorcycles because we've seen groups of motorcycles have been speeding across the Ringling Bridge. So we had a group out there. They clocked the motorcycle doing over 90 miles an hour, close to 100 miles an hour. As soon as we turned our lights on, it accelerated and kept going. And at that point, it's too dangerous for us to pursue a vehicle like that because they could end up crashing. And then ultimately, the liability falls back on the police department and the city, and we get blamed because a person killed themselves doing that fast. So we're trying to come up with creative ideas on how to stop people from speeding. But I think once more people come out into the workforce and back out attending, shopping and restaurants and everything, it may slow people down a little bit just naturally. But until then, we're going to continue to do speed enforcement. I've actually encouraged our patrol officers, not just our traffic officers, to do speed enforcement. We're looking at increasing the number of radar units that we have in our regular patrol cars. They're not radar anymore. Eileen, you'll appreciate this. I still call them radar, but it's really laser, like LiDAR that they use to measure speed, much more technology advancements. So, but we are going to continue to have police presence there, continue to write tickets, and educate people through social media.
All right. Who else has a question? Clark.
I just wanted to find out about, in talking about all the crime, the levels of domestic abuse.
We're looking at that closely. We're looking at that closely because since the beginning, my concern was that we would see an increase in domestic violence. Right now, though, I haven't seen that increase, and that concerns me because what I think is happening is that the individuals that are stuck at home with their family members don't have the ability to do outreach and make calls if they are feeling abused, if they are being abused, or they are feeling threatened. And the same thing with child abuse. Normally, the majority of the calls we get on those type of cases are from outside parties like teachers or salons. The other people are notifying us about abuses. So, yes, so it's a challenge for us. We're working closely with Spark though, and I think once that things open up, we're probably going to get a lot more cases. And we are arresting people. If I told you the number of cases, it troubles me so much of strangulation, of a boyfriend strangling their girlfriends, and especially pregnant women. It's so troubling to me to see that. So I know that's something that's near and dear to Eileen also. We've been working hard to try to come up with ways to reduce it, but we are tracking it, and I have been from the beginning because I was concerned about it.
Yeah, strangulation was always a domestic violence major issue.
Yes.
David.
Yes, Chief. I was just curious. How are you feeling about the roundabouts after the one's been open for give or take two weeks? How is that? How is that going, anecdotally or otherwise?
Well, anecdotally, I've gotten complaints about individuals that don't know how to drive through the roundabouts, that are not being polite, that are speeding, that are not giving the right of way. So I haven't had a number of complaints. So I haven't seen it slow down traffic yet, but again, they're not up and running. So I will wait to see how they come. I think most people know I've never been a big fan of roundabouts. And I said that in the past. But that's the direction that it was gone on, and we'll do our best to make sure people are safe, make sure that they are following the rules, and we're putting educational videos out, and we're even looking at putting something once we open our police station, having a mock roundabout so people can come in, even kids, and learn how to ride in the roundabout. So we'll see how it goes.
But no crashes so far that you're aware of? No fender benders?
I can't say that. I would have to go and check.
Yeah, okay.
We've had a number of crashes in different areas, but the speed limit is only supposed to be 25 right around Fruitville and 41. I still see people speeding there and still going way too fast through the roundabouts. So it's a matter of time, but hopefully with the roundabouts, it'll reduce the seriousness of the crashes. That's what I've heard, and historically is what they said. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be more crashes. It just means that they're going to be less likely to have serious injuries as a result of the crashes.
I'm going to ask Jamie if she has a question because she's on the phone rather than, Jamie, are you there?
I am. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Do you have a question?
I do. I actually wanted to ask Chief, how can we as citizens and the DSCA best help our officers? How can we help you?
Well, that's a great question, and I really appreciate your concern about that. And the support of our community is it's so important. It's what keeps us driven to do our job. And we've seen so many people have been so kind and generous to us. People have sent lunches, they've sent pizzas, they've sent different things to keep our spirits up. And we really feel bad because we at least are still working. And I know there's a number of people in our community that unfortunately can't even go out and work or socialize with people. But we've been so grateful for that attention. We've had groups that have gone and lit up their community and rang bells in appreciation. The Hyatt actually had a nice message sign on the side of their wall the other night. So we've been feeling the love from our community. But one of the things you can do as organizations to make sure that your citizens are safe is, one, remind them about locking up their cars. That'll be something I probably preach until the day I'm no longer a police chief. Lock your cars, even if it's in your driveway, even if it's in your garage. That's where we're seeing 80% of our vehicle burglaries are occurring because of target. They go and unlock the car door, and then they have access to all of your belongings inside. I encourage people to drive carefully and with patience. Try to take a deep breath and realize that traffic's probably going to get heavier, and even if it's not, there's a lot of people that are driving recklessly. And what we do is get tag numbers of people and just call us and give us those tag numbers. We actually had a complaint from an individual about a big truck, you may have seen it, who whenever they go by walkers or bikers, spout out black smoke, which is so aggravating that they do that. But luckily they got video and a photo of the tag number, so we're going to be addressing that. So try to be really good witnesses for us. Make sure that you guys are practicing all of the executive orders that are out there. Practice social distancing. Encourage your people to get out and walk, but keep their spaces. Try not to be aggravated with each other. I know it's really hard. I have to tell you, even though I've been able to come back and forth to work, I feel like I've been living in a cave for the last several months. And it was so nice just to be able to get back out onto the tennis court this past week and just be able to play tennis after a couple of months. So I know people are aggravated, but that's the biggest thing, is just to keep people informed. Let them know to call us if they have any issues, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. And I'll be very forthright with you. There's some things I can do, and there's some things I can't do. The challenge right now is making sure I have enough resources to address all of the issues that have come forward to us, because the police have been tapped to take care of more than just traffic and criminal. We're taking care of homeless issues. We're taking care of making sure the executive orders are being followed. We're taking care of a lot of things that are not traditionally law enforcement responsibility. And so we're kind of being spread a little thin that way, but we're honored to be out there serving our community. And I'm proud of our officers. They're doing a great job.
Steve, how many officers do you have actually functioning right now? How many are on the force right now?
We have 179 police officers are on our force, and some are in the police academy. We actually have a couple that are getting ready to graduate. They won't do the traditional graduation, which is a shame for them, but just like the seniors in high school and the college students, it's sad that they can't celebrate, but they're finding unique ways. Like, we have a kindergarten, first and second grade class that's graduating, and they've asked us to do a Zoom type of a graduation with them. So people are finding creative ways. So we have some officers graduating out of the academy. We have one that's standing by that's been doing online training. So we're doing really good with our workforce. I'm really happy with our numbers, and that's why we were able to create that CAT squad.
So do you have any out on sick leave, or I know normally like 20 or some odd that are out on long-term leave or something?
Yeah, we've been, it's funny, during the pandemic, we found our officers are all coming into work. Our numbers of that are off are low, very low. Right now, we actually have 3 officers that are quarantined because of a potential COVID-19 exposure. So they went and got tested yesterday. We're waiting for the results to come back. Unfortunately, 3 officers and 1 civilian. We're waiting for results to come back for the test, and hopefully they'll again come back negative. And we thought we had a good test lined up. Well, we were going to buy and have everybody tested, but unfortunately it came back as, like I said, not FDA approved.
Okay. Other questions?
Chief, has this changed your,
And Mel.
did you say, wait a minute?
No, I said, and then Mel. You first.
Okay. I just wanted to ask if it's how your communication and coordination with this county has changed or improved or diminished, or what's going on there?
You know, I've never been on so many phone conference calls and Zoom calls in my life. Every single day, it seems like I'm on a different conference call. I think the communication is greater than it's ever been before. The county has had a 2 o'clock call. I think today was the first day that they haven't had one in over 2 months. I think on the weekends they stopped a few weeks ago, but the county's been communicating what's been going on from the state level, because as you know, it goes from the state to the county, and then the information comes to the city. Todd Kirkering is our emergency management director. He's in close contact with the county. So is the city manager, and but the information is flowing. And like I said, we've been meeting with the city directors are on a call 3 times a week at 9 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for anywhere from an hour or longer, sharing information, making sure we're all coordinated. Business is going in the police department. We are in the middle. We've actually submitted our budget a long time ago. We're waiting. We have a budget meeting tomorrow to discuss budget. Since the budget process started, things have changed a lot in the city because of the COVID-19. So it's caused us to have to potentially modify some of the budget throughout the city. And I'm hoping that I'm a very half full, glass half full kind of a person. So I'm hoping that once things open up, that our economy will come back. I'm hearing some positive things from the business community. They think because COVID has shut down a lot of the international travel and even travel from state to state, that maybe more people will want to stay at home or close to home in Florida. So they're anticipating maybe more hotel bookings here in the city of Sarasota and more expenses in the summer, as opposed to which usually a little bit slower time. So I think that's a positive. I hope that's true. But all of the departments in the city, including the police department, we're really tightening our belts, anticipating that there could be a reduction in revenue because of COVID-19 and unanticipated revenue reductions in the future because there might be a resurgence. But again, I'm hopeful that we'll have a vaccine by the fall, or if not the winter. But I'm also a skeptic on some things, and one of it is that half the community doesn't even get their flu vaccine. So I'm wondering how many actually will get the COVID-19 vaccine when it comes out. So I hope people will, take advantage of it when it does come out.
Mel, you had a question.
I did, but Chief's already touched on it. I was going to ask her about the budget, whether she anticipates any cuts in patrol officers, or how it's going to impact you.
Yes, I don't think there'll be any cuts out of our current staffing. I don't anticipate that. I hope that doesn't happen. I think there's going to be some changes in what the request that I had made is going to change a little bit. Like I said, my budget hearing with the city manager and the financial director out of us. You know, we are spending within our budget. We actually went into our current budget and we were able to give a significant amount of money back to the city to be able to work with during COVID-19. So we're team players when it comes to that. And we know it's the taxpayers' money. It's your money as citizens. And so what we did was with the city manager said, you know, no travel out, even for training other than certification. So we've cut all of our training and travel accounts through October. We've done other ways to tighten our belt so that we can make sure that we're spending responsibly during these troubling times. But we're hopeful that things are going to pick up.
Roger, did you have a question?
Yes, Chief, what would you do? And it's a bit of a hypothetical, I suppose, but probably
Okay.
not. What would you do if a crowd gathers at a bar, unmasked, playing music? Is this a violation of any orders? Is there anything you could do about that?
Roger, I'm sorry, you were broken up for most of your
Okay.
question. Can you repeat it?
Yes, I'd be glad to.
Can you hear it now?
Can you hear me
Roger
now?
Yeah.
Hello?
Can you hear Roger?
I can hear him now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's not hypothetical, but let us say a crowd gathers at a bar, there's music, there's drinking, they're unmasked, there are 40 people. What kind of enforcement would you deal with that?
We actually had those type of situations happen during the outbreak. And what our officers did is they went in masked and we had brochures. We actually had flyers that we handed out to individuals and advised them they were in violation. And luckily everyone complied once we got there and handed out the brochures. They weren't happy about it. We have some video that shows that they weren't very happy about it. But we didn't want to be confrontational. We just wanted to be educational. And ultimately, you know, we're living in a free society that unfortunately people make their own choices. And it's really tough to enforce, you know, saying you can't have more than 10 people here because ultimately it could lead to a fight, which ultimately could lead to our officers having to make an arrest, which eventually could be, you know, there could be challenges to it in the future. So we did our best to get people to comply. And like I said, for the most part, they really did. We really didn't want to make a lot of arrests during this COVID-19 also. We wrote citations in lieu of arrest when it was appropriate. That didn't mean we weren't going to arrest people for felonies or serious violations, but we didn't want to put people in jail where we knew the potential for the sheriff's deputies as well as the individuals in the jail further exposed by COVID. So it was walking a very fine line. I have to tell you, it was very, there were times where I felt like I was making these life and death decisions that were going to potentially jeopardize my own staff, staff of other organizations, and plus the community. So, but I'm very happy with how things have turned out so far, and our community's been great.
Patrick, you had a question.
Yes, Chief, just as a quick follow-up to that, and I've heard things in other cities, not in Sarasota, where you had a restaurant or a venue like that that was in violation of the guideline, I mean, the executive order, and they were simply cited and then shut down for 30 days or something. So, I mean, I don't want to see any business here, you know, be further economically impacted, but isn't it the business owner's responsibility? And that is, in fact, one of the things that always comes up in conditional use hearings is what has been the citation, you know, anything reported to the police. So I think it's important that that be documented if that, in fact, if the proprietor who is responsible, we see other businesses in town that the proprietors are taking the lead and the ownership saying, this is my business. I don't want to lose my license. I don't want to be shut down. And they're walking around and they're telling people, no, you got to stay apart. So isn't it the proprietor's responsibility?
It absolutely is. And we are taking reports on every incident where we see that there's a violation or potential violation to document it so that there can be a record of that. And you're right, I would have to say, if not all, the majority of business owners in our community are complying.
Yeah.
And they want to be responsible. They don't want to have the stigma or the responsibility of being in violation, because they know people, there are still people that are quite tentative about going out and even dining outside, let alone shopping, and except for the grocery store and Lowe's. There are a ton of people there, and Costco. People are all over the place in these places. They're all over. I've never seen more people in some of these facilities. But I still see people being very cautious, going into restaurants, going into retail. I'm surprised, though, I see a lot of people without masks. And I really would encourage people to at least wear masks. And there was a story, if you don't mind me sharing a story that I heard about it. And it had to do with two people that were not wearing clothes. And one guy decided to urinate. And of course, you know what happens. It got all over the other person. And they said, well, if that guy was wearing pants, then maybe some of it wouldn't, get on the other person. And that's true. It would mostly get on him. But then if you were wearing pants, then it wouldn't get on either one of you. So that's the same thing with the mask. If you wear a mask and they wear a mask, it will hopefully prevent the spread of anything happening. Thank you for laughing.
I think I have to poke out my mind's eye right now. Peter.
Chief, as you probably know, I'm very interested in what happens to our homeless population downtown. And I've got to tell you that I think that your offices do an outstanding job. And I keep telling people, I tell the DSCA, I tell the condominiums, what a great job your guys, your people do, not just the guys, but the women as well. They're doing a terrific job with their Educate, Encourage, Enforce program, and it works. And I think your initial comments were that there were more on the streets than normal. And that was probably true at the beginning of this pandemic and the shutdown in the city. Then suddenly, after a few complaints, there were hardly any homeless people in the places they normally gather. And in fact, on several days, and I walk the streets every day, I don't know how much longer I can do this before I have to get a headache. I mean, I get a headache, get a haircut. Then suddenly there were more police cruisers and police officers in those places where the homeless gathered than there were homeless. And in talking to the police officers, none of them knew where the homeless people went. But with a little further investigation, I found that many of them just had changed locations to campsites or behind a school here in Rosemary District or so forth. So is this a strategy that you see working that will maybe go beyond the shutdown of the city?
Yeah, no, thank you for the recognition of that. And I'm really proud of the program. It's an internationally recognized program, and it's actually being repeated all over the country, what we do, the 3 E's. And I will tell you, a number of the individuals that you're talking about were actually housed during this COVID-19 outbreak. We've had probably over 30 individuals that were put into housing. And what we did during the period where we started to see an influx of additional homeless was I actually had a detail put together in the traditional areas where the homeless like to hang out. And we just did our 3 E's of encouragement, enforcement, and education, not necessarily in that order. And we also had a great relationship with the Salvation Army, which they were unsure if they were going to be able to house a number of individuals during this because they were concerned about the COVID outbreak and whether they had enough individuals to work at the Salvation Army. But they let us put people in their location for the $15 a night, and which helped us also. So there were a number of things we did strategically to help, including educating the homeless to make sure they're social distancing also. And it was very interesting. If you could guess how many people, just hold up your fingers to tell me how many people you think actually were exposed to COVID-19 that were homeless. How many positive cases do you think that we had in this whole time?
Very few.
One. One individual who wasn't even from the city of Sarasota. He was from Manatee County, and the county ended up putting that individual into a location in the county to be monitored during the, their quarantine time. So the good news was we haven't had any cases. That doesn't mean there's not going to be, or they're out on the street. They're in contact with each other. We worried about them being exposed and then exposing other people. So the good news is that only one person, and it wasn't even somebody from our own county or the city. And the other thing is I think that the people that were homeless were just as concerned about their health and safety as everybody else, because they're people just like us, and they realized that it was really important for them to get into a safe spot where they weren't exposed to COVID-19 themselves, but the resources were still available. Salvation Army was still available. Resurrection House was still available a couple of days a week. Plus, there was an organization, a church, that would come by and pick up a number of the homeless people and drive them into a location in the county for the day. And so there were a number of strategies. We worked hard during the COVID, and that was another one of those many phone calls that I was on, trying to figure out solutions, and including the city manager bringing some cleaning stations for people to be able to utilize so that they didn't use the outside and they had an ability to clean themselves up too. So it's still a challenge. We're going to continue it. I'll tell you, quite frankly, we will never end homelessness. If anybody thinks that we are, it's a naive, I think, mentality, but we can reduce homelessness and we can help address some of the issues. The biggest challenge is mental health related to the homeless and addictions also, but I think we've got a really good plan and program. We're going to continue to do that.
Peter, did you have any other questions on that subject?
No, not on that one. I do have one that I think is a concern of a number of residents who drive downtown and park. I believe parking is under your purview.
It is not.
It isn't, okay. But
it's not, I'm sorry.
It could be. Okay. Then I'm going to save my question for City Manager Bowen then.
Yeah.
For Mr. Lyons.
Yeah, Mark Lyons.
I thought he was.
Was the Salvation Army able to
Speaking
have
Clark.
any kind of social distancing in their
They were.
facility?
They were. And they did.
So
yes.
beds where the homeless were sleeping were 6 feet apart, or anything?
Yes, they were able to do things to keep the social distancing guidelines, is my understanding. Yes, they were able to, because they were concerned about the homeless, but also themselves too, because they're workers that are in there. Yes.
Roger, you raised your hand.
Yes. Do we know how many of the homeless have been tested for the virus?
No, I don't. I have no idea. I do know that Robert Earl Taylor has a testing site that's open. That is, people are able to go there and get tested. I have no idea, and we wouldn't have that type of information either, because that would be probably HIPAA protected. So we have no idea.
Jamie, do you have a question?
No, she's answered all the questions I had on there. In fact, 3 of them she answered right out the gate.
I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you because I can't see
no
you.
problem.
Chief, we have Roger, who you were just speaking to, who did a survey of the streets of Sarasota Main Street area. Roger, do you want to tell the chief about that survey?
Whoa, okay. This was just a restaurant on Main Street, in the lower downtown from Palm up to Orange. And we took a look at the number of restaurants there and how many of the staff were wearing masks and how many were not. And I did it 2 different nights, and the results are almost the same, although there are some minor changes. And of the 25 restaurants, 11 had no mask on the staff. They were all maskless, as best we could tell from looking into the restaurant. And 12 were wearing masks. And so it's about 60% wearing masks and the rest not, which is kind of nerve-wracking to me. I can't imagine going into a restaurant personally in which the servers are not masked.
I would not eat in a restaurant that didn't have a masked individual. So I agree with you. And the city was handing out masks to city residents, and so they could have gotten masks for nothing if they needed it. But I'm surprised that anyone is serving without a mask, at least initially now. I agree with you. You don't have to tell me. If you want to tell me later who the restaurants are, I think they should be wearing masks. But again, that's all a personal choice, whether they wear them or not.
Chief, a question. Mask wearing is not something in the executive order that you can actually enforce, is it?
No.
But the social distancing groups of 10, you can.
Right.
And the proximity of tables, I believe, is in the executive order as well.
Yes. Yes.
So those are things that you can actually enforce.
Yes.
Now, does it help you if volunteers like Roger and others share a list of restaurants that might be
Yes.
troublesome? And
Yes.
how could we best do that as a function of DSCA? How could we, the Downtown Sarasota Condo Association, how could we help you with that?
Yes, no, absolutely. You have my email, so email me the list of the restaurants that you found were in violation, and I will have our officers go there, make sure we educate them, and if we see them in violation, we will, again, write the report and refer them to the state for that, and also talk to the owners, because I find most owners are usually agreeable if we talk to them about it and tell them that they're in violation, because they don't want to lose their ability to do business. I think most of them are excited to get back to work. So please just forward it to my email and we'll address it.
And I know you're trying not to actually cite people, but it is, I believe if I read it right, a second-degree misdemeanor.
It is, yes.
Which is, not something you really want to have on your record.
No, exactly. No, and it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good for your reputation as a business owner to know that you're acting outside of the guidelines that the governor has established. Because most people, like me, I would not want to go to a restaurant that I knew was intentionally abusing the guidelines, the rules that the governor has set out.
I'm sorry, I'm confused a bit. If the restaurant doesn't require its wait staff to wear masks, are they in violation of any? No.
No.
It's okay. It's only the social distancing and the other things. Okay.
Yes.
See, I guess as members of the Downtown Condo Association, our membership might be interested in where you want to go out to dinner, which places are safer and which ones are less safe.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure they would be. I think that was an excellent thing to do. We ought to keep doing that.
Yes.
You can eat your way up Main Street and down the others. So. And we'll see if you get sick.
I will
Please
tell you
don't.
that.
Please don't.
I'll tell you, during the pandemic, our police department often ordered out because we wanted to support the businesses that were still doing carry out. And I will tell you, every place that we ever ordered from were masked, took it seriously. We're using sanitary conditions. So I'd be very interested myself personally to know which ones were not, because I would not go there either. Because if they're not practicing safe conditions outside where I can see them, I would hate to see what their kitchen looked like. Because
That's a good point. Patrick.
Yes, Chief, we just saw the announcement that they're going to close portions of Main Street, I think State Street, this coming weekend. And I assume, though, the distancing guidelines still apply outdoors.
they do.
So that's
will.
something, is that going to impact having officers on the street in those areas to walk around and like you don't end up with too many people in a waiting line or something there, as occurred in front of Melvin's a couple weeks ago or something?
Yeah, we will have officers. We actually will have additional officers on force this weekend because it is Memorial Day weekend. It's traditionally a busy weekend, even without COVID-19. We anticipate a lot of people at the beaches. That's one of the areas I'm concerned about with some overcrowding there. But at least it's outdoors. That's a good thing. We will have foot officers and bike officers working in the downtown area, absolutely. The closing of some of the streets, I don't know the exact what they're doing exactly in the city yet. I know they were looking at experimenting with allowing them to use parking spaces. Maybe some of the streets are being shut down, and then which would actually allow for more space for people to feel more comfortable to walk. I knew I saw a plan of like 4 different plans. I'm not sure which one they picked yet. But we will have officers out there to keep an eye on that. And we'll probably go out early and educate the business owners too, to remind them that they have to do social distancing, because we have walking beat officers out there. So we'll get them to do that.
Just for a minute, going back to the domestic violence and child abuse issue from the beginning, I agree with you that some people who are living in that situation might be afraid to report. But what should other people do if they notice something, or they pick up on something that they feel very uncomfortable about, or they suspect or they know something abusive is happening? Who should they call?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple different things. One is if you are friends or have a relationship with a person, really encourage them to go forward and report it, and tell them you'll be there to support them, because they really need that. When you're a victim of domestic violence, you're not sure what your future is going to be. You don't know where you're going to live. You don't know who's going to take care of you and your kids, where your next paycheck is going to there's a lot of dependency that the individual has on the abuser, and where the abuser is arrested and usually goes to court, the court orders them to go through anger management or some other type of treatment, and a lot of marriages are saved after that happens. So I really encourage, and it's especially women, because women are the majority of the people being abused in these cases, but men also can be victims of domestic violence abuse. It's just women are the majority of the victims, and I really encourage women to come forward, report it to the police. If you have a friend or a family member, or you recognize somebody, you might be a salon owner and you recognize someone has bruises, or they share with you that they have been abused. It's really important for you to contact the Sarasota Police Department. And if you aren't in the city, to contact the Sheriff's Department, which are, by the way, the same numbers, and report it to us so we can go and investigate, because that doesn't necessarily mean that that person's going to go to jail for the rest of their life. It may mean that that person ends up getting the help that they need to stop being an abuser. And you're also saving future families, because children learn from the abuser, and they will take on the behaviors that they see, and they think that's a normal relationship. And you don't want your kids growing up in that type of relationship, and we don't want our future kids, and which are going to be running our country, to think that that's okay. So please report it to us. We've got great cooperation with Spark, and they have housing, and we'll do everything we can to help maybe try to solve and fix the relationship. So that's the best thing to do, is to call us and allow us to be able to help you. And if you don't feel comfortable going to the police, at least then call a Spark, which is a domestic violence resource, and they will help get you help, whether it's housing or a job or clothes or things for your kids. So I think it's important to report it.
Or a restraining order. Anybody else have any questions? I know that we're taking a lot of the chief's time here, so.
Okay, I'm enjoying it. It's great talking to all of you.
Well,
Chief,
I wish we could all be in the same room. Clark?
Yeah, Chief, have you got any concerns that when I talk to a friend in California, they're appalled at how loosey-goosey we are here, how casual we've become. And I talked to a friend in Boston, and he said that they're much more restrictive on going to stores, going out, wearing masks, much greater concern. Are you at all concerned that we're being too casual here, that the groups that are gathering at the beach, and if there is another outbreak, is there some sort of a plan to approach that?
We already are preparing for the next outbreak, if and when there is one that happens, because we are anticipating that there may be, just like the flu that happens every single year. I'm only concerned in some of the cavalier behavior that some people have. I think it's important for all of us to be conscious, to take care of ourselves. Just like when you go out in the sun, I think it's important to wear sunscreen. And there's a lot of people that don't wear sunscreen and they end up burning themselves. But the thing is, the difference between that and this is that you could actually expose innocent people if you have it. So it's important for you to practice social distancing, wear a mask where it's appropriate. I'm not so worried about some of the beach activity. Most of the people on the north side of Lido, the beach, are going to social distance. I've seen people social distancing and doing what they're supposed to do. My concern is when you have people that are outside of our community that, maybe even college students and people from other areas. I've heard about this in other beaches on the West Coast, where people come over from the East Coast because their beaches are shut down, and they have these huge parties. Their behavior's outrageous. It's dangerous. They're fighting. It's violent, and that's where the exposures are significantly increased. But I don't anticipate seeing that on Lido. I'm hoping that everybody's going to behave themselves this weekend, enjoy it, because I will tell you from the leadership that I know in our city, they are not afraid to shut stuff down if they think things are going to cause additional exposures. I'm confident that they will do that, and I will share with them if I have concerns about it. But so far, what I'm seeing by our community for the most part is they're acting appropriately. Places like Publix, they've got it down to a science now, whereas maybe at the beginning, most businesses didn't know how to respond. Now they have the one way up and the one way down the aisles, which please pay attention to that, because you get dirty looks if you go down the wrong aisle,
Walmart does the same thing.
Yeah, be very careful of that. And I think it's important for people to wear their masks when they're in the stores and maintain social distancing. So as many bad behaviors as I've seen so many more positive behaviors from people being kind to each other, people being caring. But again, I'm worried now that things are opening up. I see more agitated individuals, more protests, more people looking to violate the government. And please, anybody that's listening out there, I know you see the police and you think we're the first line of government, and technically we are, but we're not the only whole government. So be nice to us. We aren't. So. But I think we're gonna be okay. We're in this together, as they say, and I think we'll be okay.
Chief, are there any more questions? First of all, Chief, is there anything? Sorry, who said that?
Bob Easterly. Hey, Chief. Something just a passing thought was, I don't know if you saw in the paper today the article from Chris Anderson about. He calls it, the headline on the commentary is "Protective Gear, No Shields Against Idiots." And what he talked about, he witnessed race drivers going across the Green Bridge between Bradenton and Palmetto, and there was a car wreck. And he writes about it in there, and it goes back to Roger's earlier comments about the issues on speeding. And although the noise is an irritant, the thing that bothers me is if these cars, and I think Roger mentioned earlier, the bridge was designed for 70 miles an hour, the Ringling Bridge. They're well exceeding that, and sometimes I feel like I'm living on a NASCAR track at night and race day. But speeding is a serious issue, and I worry about the public safety. And I just want to, get that comment back in there and revisit that, because I think something terrible is going to happen the way people.
Yeah, I'm quite concerned about it. We actually just had a motorcycle fatality at Bay Vista and 41, and all speed kills, and so does the lack of wearing seatbelts. And I assure you, we're going to be continuing to enforce the speed violations. Our officers have gotten the message that they're to go and aggressively, proactively address people speeding. And just if any of you get a ticket, don't come to a lot of people out there. But the bridge is 40 miles an hour. 40. I know you said it's, and you're right. It may have been made for 70, but it's marked at 40 miles an hour. We were actually thinking about putting a marked police car down, but then we were concerned about blocking the bike lane because that's where the bikes like to travel. So we're trying to come up with a solution on how we can slow people down. I almost was thinking about slowing it down to just one lane, but then the people at Longboat and St. Armand's would be really upset with us that we reduced the traffic flowing out there. So we're really trying to brainstorm and come up with ways to slow people down through environmental design. If people don't get the message with the tickets they're getting, I mean, somebody doing 90 miles an hour and a 40 mile an hour lane, that's an expensive ticket. That's very costly. So the message is we're going to be writing tickets to people that are speeding, and we're going to be highly visible out there, especially this weekend, looking to catch people speeding. We can't get all of them, but we're going to get as many as we can.
Did we ever think we would pine for more traffic on the Ringling Bridge?
The truth.
I hope
It's the truth.
this is a magic moment.
We need a sign that says how much it costs when you get a ticket.
Well, that's not a bad idea, actually.
That's,
Well-
you know what? That's not a bad idea. I can put a sign up there and let people know. I promise you it's not going to slow them down. But, you know, I think one of the reasons why this pandemic happened, and I'm kind of being funny, is that people were praying. I wish the traffic would alleviate. I wish there wasn't so much traffic in Sarasota. And now we got it. Now there's no traffic.
Be careful what you pray for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If there aren't any other questions, I think, Chief, we're going to let you get back to work. And
Thank
we're very,
you.
very appreciative of.
Can't wait to see all of you. I can't wait to see all of you in person in the future. Don't hesitate to call me. Don't hesitate to bring your ideas forward. Roger, please send me the list of restaurants that you think are in violation. If you see a violation, just call us, okay? And I thank you. Be healthy and be safe.
And if we can
Thank
help
you.
you in any way, please let us know. And
I
thank
will.
you
Thanks a
everyone
lot.
for taking part today.
Thank you.